works, right? Faith without works is dead. Okay? We understand that. And so it's those people who say, I believe in Jesus so much, I must do something. I appreciate grace so much, I'm going to do this. And so forth. That's the true faith. Not the kind of faith that says, you know what, Jesus is my lifesaver only. Or he's my magic genie when I pray. He's the one that says, you know what, God has a will, and I'm going to do what he did. Do you know what the amazing thing about Jesus is? Jesus does exactly what he asked us to do. Do you remember when he was in the garden before he got arrested? What did he pray? He prayed, your will be done. But before he made that known, he was saying, take this cup from me, Father. Take it from me. I don't want to die. I don't want to be separated from you. I don't want all this sin upon me. I'm holy. That kind of mentality. But he would finish, your will be done. And like a lamb led to the slaughter, he was crucified for us. Think about that. Do we kind of have that desire in our lives? Are you doing the will of God? And is it your passion? One of the things that I want us to do is understand that the disciples are passionate about the will of God. They're not apathetic about it. Do you know what kind of disappoints me is I look at the world, and can we agree that the world is more tolerant of sin than it was 10 years ago? Yeah. You want to know why? And I give them credit for this, is that the people of this world with their sinful agendas are bold for their cause. They are extremely bold. And you know what? Because we don't want to offend them, we shirk down and we remain quiet, and then we are surprised that the world is turning that way. It's like, you know what? The way to combat that is with righteousness. Do we forget we're in a spiritual battle? So when we start doing the will of God, we speaking the word of God, we share the gospel message, guess what? That's how we're going to combat evil. And this is one of the things that we understand. Is the will of God a priority in your life? Because all day, we can talk about our favorite sports teams really well. We can dream about that next job promotion. We can dream about that nice new car or that nice outfit from the department store, whatever it may be. How much time do you actually lay in bed dreaming about doing the will of God? How often do you sit and get excited about what you can do for God? What are the times where you say, you know what, those are people I really want to touch with them, and you're excited about it. Not just obligatory to be like, oh, I must share Jesus. It's like, you know what, there's no better experience than seeing someone come to Christ. There's no better experience than just showing the compassion Jesus showed. I mean, isn't it thrilling when you're doing something good for someone, and then you know they can't pay you back, but they only have it because you did something? And it's like, wow, I did that. I did that. And it's because God allowed me, and I did it because that's what Jesus did before. You see, this is where we got to start doing the will of God. And this is part of it. You know, he says only those who are going to do the will of God, because those who do the will of God are the ones with true faith, because they understand Jesus. They understand what it means to love God and love their neighbor. They understand the greatest commandments. And so when Jesus is making known, these are the ones who are going to be saved, he's going to be asking you, what did you do in regards to the will of the Father? This isn't about earning your salvation, because a natural overflow of someone with a true justified faith will do what Jesus did. And it makes me think of this passage in Matthew chapter 25, verse 31 through 40. And it talks about judgment, and it talks about the will of God. It says, when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his throne in heavenly glory, and all the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another, as a shepherd separates sheep from the goats. And he will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go and visit you? The king will reply, I will tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did for me. You want to know the will of God? It's that. So when you stand before judgment and he's saying, only those who do the will of my Father are going to be saved because they have true faith. Are you going? Is Jesus going to be able to say, you know what, you did the least of these things for me because you did them for other people? Is this a combination of the greatest commandments? You love God, so you're going to love your neighbor. I mean, I think about this. Ephesians 2 says that we were designed and purposed for good works. Not to just be saved, but to actually do what God has done. Be imitators of God. I think of worship service sometimes like a football huddle. Okay? We come together, we remember Christ and what He's done, and we encourage each other, we amp each other up, and then we go out into the world and we do what God desires, right? Now imagine if Russell Wilson gathered all the Seahawks and they're there and he gives them a play. And he says, okay, Pete Carroll has this playbook and he wants us to run this play. And so then he calls the play, they say break, and then they all run to the bench. We know the 49ers do that, but the Seahawks don't do that. But seriously, what if we did that? What if I come up here and I preach the Word of God, you agree with it, you say, yeah, we got to do that. We take part in the Lord's Supper, yeah, Jesus died for my sins. And then we say break, we leave the church building and say, okay, what's for dinner at Denny's? And that's it. Then we're running to the bench. When in fact, God called us to action. Do you see the difference there? I want us to be a church. I want us to be disciples that when we stand before Christ, He says, you did the least, you helped the least of these. I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. You did the will of my Father. The very few who will find life are those who are going to do what Jesus did. Sacrifice. I mean, think about all the things that we occupy our times with. Was Jesus rich on earth? Did He prioritize? Did He dream and say, well, someday I'm going to get that nice chariot? No. He said, you know, one day I'm going to take up a cross. One day I'm going to lay down my life for my friends. And that's a hard thing to do, saying, His will be done. You want to know why? Because it's going to challenge you more than you've ever been challenged. It's going to take you out of your comfort zone, guaranteed. You do the will of God, you will be out of your comfort zone. You do the will of God, you're going to sacrifice. You do the will of God, you will be persecuted. You do the will of God, it'll be hard. But you'll be like Jesus. You'll understand grace. You'll have a joy that can never be experienced unless you're like Jesus. So even though it may sound burdensome, that's actually the true source of joy. It's living for Jesus and being like Jesus. And understanding the things He did. Another thing that we understand is discipleship requires more than looking good. It requires authenticity. You know, one of the things that these people are going to do before Jesus in judgment is say, well, look at all the things we did for you. You know what Jesus is going to say? So? I died on the cross for the world's sins. What you did is puny. But the reason for it is He knows the hearts. Is God going to be deceived? Is God mocked? No. And here's the amazing things. We can do a whole bunch of religious things. Did the Pharisees do the religious things? Yeah. Did they worship at the temple? Did they offer up sacrifices? Did they tithe a tenth of everything? Did they fast? Did they pray? They did all those things. But what did Christ make known about them? Their hearts are far from Him. It's a matter of the heart. Why do you do those religious things? Is it because it's habit? Is it because of upbringing? Is it because you want to look good to other people? Is it just because it makes you feel, you know what, I checked it off so I'm good enough to go to heaven? Or is it because you love and fear and worship and obey God? The motive and the reason for why you do things matters, does it not? It matters. I mean, this is the whole motivation. I mean, this is asking ourselves, why do we go to worship service? Why do we build relationships? Why do we evangelize? Why do we do all these things? I mean, isn't that why we have to check the motives? How do we know about false teachers? Their motives. How do we know about whether or not people are true or not in their faith? Their motives. I mean, what should be our motivation? And does authenticity really matter? Because you may fool everyone in the church, but you can't fool God. But the thing is, if you truly love God, everyone's going to know by the fruit of your life that you love Him. They're going to know. And one of the motivation for it should be the greatest commandments. And I want to read this. And it's important that we realize the authenticity of our lives and our faith.